Hello and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. Y'all, this conversation that we're diving into tonight has so much relevance for every single one of us. We are examining why do we hold on to pain? And it really comes on the heels of yesterday's conversation around why does the world feel so heavy? And so if you have not tuned into that, I encourage you to just take a quick revisit of yesterday's chat and also the conversation because we talked a lot about how our inner architecture, how our inner state has so much to do with the world around us and what we see and what we experience. Just today, I was actually remembering how there was a key point in my life. It was very pivotal, and it really fell on the heels of my brother in law being killed by a drunk driver. And for about 6.5 years, I refused to go inward and to do the work and to address the pain that was going on inside of me. And I had a couple of different narratives around why. And narratives are effectively kind of like the excuse we might use around the why, but when we really dig deep, there's usually layers and realities that we had no idea about that really were the real reason that prevented us from growth or prevented us from doing the work to begin with. So when I really looked in the mirror and really analyzed, well, why did it take me so long to heal from this loss? I realized a couple of things, and we'll get to that at some point here in the show. But it's important, when we have these moments around why do we hold on to pain and why is life so heavy? Why does the world feel so broken? It is so incredibly easy to look around us and see real elements that are just completely outside of our control that really are truly broken. And simultaneous to that, that's where this and conjunction is so important for us to hold seemingly two opposing views at the same time. But I heard a friend say the ability to do that, to hold seemingly opposite points of view or seemingly opposite realities in tandem is perhaps the mark of an adult. And I love that perspective. So holding into one position that the world is broken and it is incredibly painful, and also holding the reality and the fact that we actually can alter our external experience to a pretty large degree by way of our own perspective, by way of the way that we choose to view the world. Then you add in a third dimension to that. Now it's not just you're holding two dualities in tandem. Now you're adding a third one, and adding in that aspect of if my eggs are not all in the basket in this physical world, but I recognize that there's so much more that's going to come on the other side of this, I can actually maintain hope. I can actually go through the very things that feel so devastating from a very objective point. Most people objectively would agree that death is painful, that loss is grievous. And then you add in this other dynamic where it's okay, but how am I coping with death? What is my responsibility in terms of how I engage with sorrow? So there's kind of the factual, objective reality, there's the internal reality on an emotional level. And then you add in this kind of almost spiritual dimension of, but is this the end of the story? So when we add it, now we're adding in layers upon layers upon layers. And so when we think about on the Knowing Show, we talk about our four intelligences and cultivating each one, cultivating the intellectual intelligence. So much of the intellectual intelligence is observing the facts. It's looking at data. It's looking at kind of hard numbers and being unbiased as much as possible, being objective. And then you look at the emotional intelligence, and that is looking at it through the lens of kind of that right hemisphere of the brain. And it is through the lens of what is the emotion, the creativity, the nurturing, the fostering, the love or grief associated with the objective truth, the objective reality. And then you add in the spiritual lens, the metaphysical. Man, y'all, when we start adding these dimensions, all of a sudden, something that was once just black and white is now full of color. It's like turning a diamond, and all of a sudden, you see sparkles that you never saw before because we're looking at it from just a very two-dimensional lens. So allowing for the cultivation of our internal intelligence, our emotions, our intellect, our mind, even our body, all of a sudden something that was once black and white begins to illuminate with color. And then we start seeing so much more than we ever thought possible to begin with. So, to this question, why do we hold on to pain? And yet to yesterday's question of why does the world feel so heavy? It really behooves us to consider, well, when I am looking at the world, what is the lens through which I'm looking? Do I have the emotional maturity, the capacity to hold these different aspects and angles in tandem? It's like when you go into a boardroom and you've got your board of directors coming and sitting at the table, and each one has very different opinions. They all see the world in very different ways. Yet we've chosen each one to be in that seat because we know we need the intellect. We need the objective reality. We know we need the emotional intelligence. We need to be emotionally healthy because relationships are predicated in connection on an emotional scale. We know that we need to understand what is our body storing, what is that going to tell us? So when we start having a value placed on our internal world and what each part of us has to tell us, now we can start seeing, experiencing, and then moving through life and inevitably grief when it comes to us in a very holistic way. So why do we hold on? Why do we hold on to pain? For so many of us, but from my personal experience as well, a lot of times our identity inevitably becomes wrapped up in our grief. I have multiple friends of mine who their past is kind of their calling card in so many ways for their business and for why they are the impressive entrepreneur that they are. I work with a lot of founders, executives. And so when your identity has been predicated in a narrative that has been painful, well, if I'm going to move away from that pain, am I abandoning a part of my identity? And then who am I apart from pain? Who am I apart from grief? So there's these different elements around holding on to pain. How is the pain of the past actually serving me in the present? Sometimes the pain of the past is protecting me from engaging vulnerably with and in connection with other people. Sometimes the pain of the past is actually the thing that's serving as boundaries for me to protect me from engaging in a similar way. So it could be by way of the example of using boundaries. It's, oh, I've been hurt like that in the past. I'm not going to re-engage. And similarly, it could be, I've already experienced this once before. I'm actually going to completely avoid this altogether. So sometimes it can look like I'm just going to have boundaries. Sometimes it can look like I'm just going to completely avoid a similar scenario. And y'all, it's interesting. When we talk about holding on to pain, it could also look like repeating the same things that caused the pain to begin with. We hear about folks who return to their abusers. How is your pain serving you? What is your pain doing for you? And maybe even satiating a part of you that was empty to begin with. I'm thinking about a friend of mine, very successful entrepreneur, has had and sold multiple businesses. And his story, if he was to forgive and move to a place of perhaps even confidence and really able to love who he is, I don't know if his story would hold the same kind of vigor and same kind of attraction, because so much of the human psyche actually is drawn to that which is dismal, something that is depressing. We're kind of drawn to the negative. So, what would happen to me if I started presenting myself as someone full of joy? Would I still get the same type of attention? Would I still get the same kind of love? Because if our entire relationship with the external world is based in who I have been from this place of pain, well, all of a sudden, the thought of replacing the pain with joy or replacing the pain with hope or love becomes the big risk. All right. I think we're back. Sorry about that. I'm in the random foothills of New Hampshire. The last couple of days has just been very spotty Wi-Fi. So sorry about that. Y'all, are we brave enough to confront the reality of who would I be stripped of the bad things that have happened to me? Because there is a lot of courage in the comfort of that sad tale, and here's the thing. I have received so much love when I've been going through the hardest times of my life, and I distinctly remember this moment where I almost felt like I was leaving the place of the wilderness. You know how when you're just in the depths and it's just absolutely terrible, and you're just grieving. I don't know how many of you have been in that place, but I remember feeling like, okay, it's time to leave the wilderness. And actually, I'm going to go find this quote because I read this right as I was like leaving the wilderness, and um, it was incredibly profound. I want to see if I can see it. Okay, I just found it. I want to read this quote to you because for those of you who have been through this, you're going to know exactly what I mean. So to leave the place where we've been existing in kind of like great amounts of pain has been, in a sense, a cocoon. And inside the cocoon, and I never knew this, inside a cocoon, a butterfly completely dissolves. It effectively dies, or I'm sorry, a caterpillar completely dissolves. And it completely, I mean, gosh, you would never know that that was once a caterpillar. And in that process of the disillusionment of its former life, its former self, it becomes something that much greater. And so how painful could that place of the cocoon be for a caterpillar? But here's the quote that I wanted to read to you. I was reading Khalil Gibran's book, The Prophet, and he says, "How shall I go in peace and without sorrow? Nay, not without a wound in the spirit shall I leave this city. Long were the days of pain I have spent within its walls, and long were the nights of aloneness. And who can depart from his pain and his aloneness without regret? Too many fragments of the spirit I scattered in these streets, and too many of the children of my longing that walk naked among these hills, and I cannot withdraw from them without a burden and an ache. It is not a garment I cast off this day, chills, but a skin that I tear off with my own hands. Nor is it a thought I leave behind me, but a heart made sweet with hunger and with thirst." Y'all, sometimes leaving behind the pain of our past is actually perhaps more painful than the pain we endured in the first place. To say goodbye to this former life, to say goodbye to what was once hoped for and dreamed for and so deeply desired, and to officially say no longer. There's this biblical story of a woman who is leaving a town, and it's actually in flames. It's burning behind her. And she goes back and she turns and looks at it. And then as the story goes, she turns into a pillar of salt because she wasn't supposed to look back. And so, guys, there's this concept about don't look back at the place of the rubble and the ashes and the times where it has really, truly brought so much pain. Look forward. Where are we going? What is the hope of the future? What is the hope of being a new creation? The old is gone. The former things have passed. And here's the thing. Sometimes the former things were beautiful things. Just because it's no longer does not mean it should not have been. So for us to kind of close the chapter and close the book and to move into the future with hope, with faith, even if it doesn't even make sense right now, but with faith in, my dad once said this to me. He was like, if you can just believe that God is good. So sometimes we have no idea what is coming, but it is a courageous step to look forward, to look ahead, and to stop looking back over our shoulder at what is no more, because therein lies our pain. And it's comfortable, it's certain, we know it. And maybe it actually holds really beautiful memories. Maybe it holds really terrifying memories, but it's a core part of our identity. So in the process of healing, there is a reconciliation. There's a coming to peace. There's a coming to rest. There's almost a closing of the coffin, and a, taking the dirt and pouring it over the open casket and saying goodbye to the past for the sake of the future, for the sake of our mission. Because hopefully, I say hopefully, I don't really know if I believe that our mission can actually die. I think parts of ourselves can die. I think parts of our future can die, and our hopes and dreams can die. But I don't know if ever the innate reason for why you and I are here could ever really die. Perhaps what is happening in the past is actually all a process to get us closer to that destination, or it's going to be used for good somehow, some way. I'm just going to jump over here into the chat. John Evans, hello. Good to see you. Gaurav, I'm so glad to see your name. Gigi, oh, I'm glad to see you, Gigi. It's been a while. David King, hello. Bruno, Dilshad, good to see you. Welder, hello. Anna, William, good to see you. RCS, hello. Ginger, Jerry, Bill, thank you guys so much for joining. Bam. Auden, British, hello, good to see you. Mick Samuel, hello. Coco, thank you for joining. Nick, Panini, hello. The Chris Kavaz, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Brian, that's so interesting, Brian. That's such a good point. Briandon, Southeast, hello. Jethro, I love it. Jethro says the past is the past. Learn from it and move on. Charlie, hello. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate you, my friend. Fishman, hello. Azalas, hello. Thank you for joining. Grim, hello. Ayote. Third Wolf, Coco. BST, hello. Jethro. Aname. Y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. I'm just looking through here to see if there's any questions or comments that could spark a conversation for us moving forward. But I'm grateful for you joining in, for your time here. Exod, hello. Husafel, good to see you. Raul, hello. Angry Angel, hello from Germany. Oh, I'm so glad. Southeast Trains. Y'all, thank you for joining. I hope you have such a wonderful night. I will be back on tomorrow morning. Probably tomorrow night. I don't know. I'm on vacation this week, and so my schedule's a bit crazed, but thank you all for joining. And as always, I hope y'all, I hope that we keep doing the work, keep doing the work to go inward and figure out who are we, what's our purpose, and why are we here, and how can we love better. I was talking with my darling's two boys tonight, and we were talking about what is emotional health and what does it mean? Why is it important to understand your emotions? And it was cool, breaking it down in the most simplistic ways for kids, and I'm grateful for the opportunity for each one of us to look in the mirror and get to know ourselves. What a privilege that is. So, Brian, I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad you're here, my friend.